All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar focused on trauma and adolescent development today. My name is Alex Lorbach, and I'm a senior associate at the Annie Casey Foundation. And in my role, I really have the privilege of leading our youth engagement and youth leadership work as it relates to young people who have experienced foster care. And I find myself in a lot of conversations about youth mental health and trauma. And so this feels like an ever-present and really important topic to be talking about today. And as we all know, the issue of youth mental health is a really pressing one, right? And it's one that the Annie Casey Foundation really raised the alarm on in its 2022 Kids Count data book. And this past spring, we joined with the US Surgeon General, along with many of you, young people and advocates and researchers and lawmakers from across the country, to host a national summit on youth mental health in Atlanta. And it's so exciting to see the momentum that has continued to grow around this topic and that people are really leaning in, so much so that we have this webinar series born out of that summit. And so this is webinar number 2 as part of that series. So today we're going to hear from a speaker who has lots of expertise in this area, and I'll introduce her in a second. But just a couple of logistics throughout the webinar. You'll notice that the chat will be turned on at certain points to engage. I know our speaker wants to be interactive with you all. And in addition, we will reserve about 10 minutes at the end for some Q&A. So you should be able to see a Q&A drop box. So please, throughout the session, drop your questions in that box, and we'll discuss them at the end. So without further ado, I'm really thrilled to introduce our speaker for today, Shantel Assa. Ms. Assata is a licensed clinical professional counselor who practices in behavioral health. She's really committed her work to providing services for diverse, underserviced, and overlooked populations facing trauma, really through treatment that helps support individuals heal and build resilience. She currently serves as a school-based clinician right here in Prince George's County, Maryland, and provides direct support for transition-age youth. So she's joined us today to share her wisdom and really continue this conversation that emerged at the summit. So welcome, Shantel. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Take us away.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. And welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Shantel Assa. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and currently I am a school-based clinician. So I work at a high school where I am exposed to a plethora of transitional aged youth. And I also have a background working in homeless shelters, working in corrections with incarcerated men and women, working with juveniles who are also, having dealings with the law. So just quite a lot of experience and exposure to working with youth. And my specialty is working with crisis population, at-risk populations, and those who are underserviced. So this is the perfect webinar series for those who are parents, volunteers, if you're a professional who works with youth, especially those who are in at-risk communities and have been exposed to trauma. I'm hoping that this will be a helpful webinar series for you. So we can go right to the next slide so I can tell you guys what we're going to be talking about today. All right, next slide. Thank you. So today I would like to cover a few topics. First, when we're discussing trauma, I want to talk about, what is trauma? What does it mean? How do we define it? Next, talking about adverse childhood experiences, the different types of trauma, and most importantly, the impact that trauma leaves on our youth development. Lastly, talking about prevention. How can we help these youth that we're working with? Next slide, please. So what is trauma? Well, according to the American Psychological Association, trauma can be defined as any disturbing experience that results in significant fear, helplessness, disassociation, confusion, or other disruptive feelings intense enough to have a long-lasting negative effect on a person's attitudes, behavior, and other aspects of functioning. So anything that causes impairment to a person's life, they're not able to work, they're having trouble in school, they may not be keeping up with their academics, or losing interest around things that once motivated them because most of their day is consumed by things that impact their previous trauma. So trauma can be broken up into three main types. There is acute, chronic, and complex trauma. So acute trauma refers to a single isolated traumatic event, such as physical or sexual assault, a motor vehicle accident, medical emergency, or a natural disaster. Chronic trauma is prolonged exposure to traumatic events such as homelessness, neglect, starvation, or deprivation, ongoing war, or perhaps even witnessing constant abuse of a partner or a family member. Lastly, the third main type of trauma is complex trauma, which involves a multitude of events happening over a long period of time, such as post-traumatic stress disorder. Next slide, please. Thank you. Adverse childhood experience. These are traumatic events that occur before a child reaches the age of 18. So for all of the providers or professionals, teachers who are working with children who are under the age of 18, when you're talking about trauma, this is the tools that you want to use, the adverse childhood experience, to then determine what has the child been exposed to. And it's also a tool used by child welfare services. So ACEs, adverse childhood experience, include all types of abuse and neglect, such as parental substance use, incarceration, and domestic violence. ACEs can also include situations that may cause trauma for a child, such as having a parent with mental illness or being a part of a family going through a divorce. And it's important to note that all trauma truly depends on each individual person. So what may not seem like trauma for the next person who may not see, like, for example, divorce as a serious trigger, parents break up, or I came from a single parent home where my parents were never together, so I don't see the big deal. It's all about that person's capacity to deal with the stress and also how it impacts them in their livelihood. So again, talking about, is it impairing them in their academics? Is it impairing them at work? Are they able to go to school every day? Are they reluctant to attend, their football, basketball games, things of that nature? Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so here's where we want to open up the chat. I would definitely love to hear from you all and see if I could get any examples of trauma. So I've named a few already, but those working with youth or any parents who are in the chat, if you could just post anything trauma related or any examples that you may come across, I would like to see what you guys are seeing out there. Assault while homeless, removal from family, absolutely. Death of a family member, sexual assault, yes. Forced immigration, absolutely. Verbal abuse. Okay, you guys can keep going. These are all great examples. So I'll move to the next slide. And you guys can keep going with your examples. These are all great examples. All right, so you guys already hit the nail on the head. You had a few of them already. These are just a small list of things that children can experience. Children and also the adults inside the household. So yes, I've seen sexual abuse on there. Also going through post-suicide attempt trauma. This is something we see a lot inside the schools and while children are being hospitalized. Some children are having a hard enough time thinking about, well, my plan was to end my life, but it didn't happen. And so now I have to deal with the reality of I have to face whatever it is that's been triggering me. And I just can't take it anymore. Also, abandonment. Abandonment is on there. You all also, I've seen something about forced immigration. That was a great example. Being a witness or victim of violence as well. So talking about trauma, you may not have directly experienced it, but sometimes just hearing about it. So let's say you work in a school like me, and your school wasn't directly affected by an active shooter coming into the school, but just hearing that and feeling as though, I can certainly see myself in a situation like that, or that hits a little bit too close to home, that can be an example and form of trauma as well. All right, so next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to, oh, yeah. So this is where I want to introduce a video, and the video does discuss trauma and the different reactions to trauma. And thank you to my technical team. I'm sure they're trying to get that up for me. So I do want to just, give a trigger warning right here. There are a lot of sensitive content, foul language, and for those who, this might be too much, please feel free to take care of yourself with presentation. If we're talking about something that could be triggering or just too much for you, please do take care of yourself and feel free to take a break. All right. And so we're just going to play a few minutes, but I would like to just go ahead and start it.
I was working with paramedics, and we got to talking, and I asked one of them what the most difficult part of the job was, and his answer was, it's the kids. And he told me a story about a call that he had responded to about a 13-year-old boy that had been pretty badly, severely hurt. And he picked the boy up. They picked the boy up from the home, and the boy's father had beaten him pretty severely. And as they're transporting him to the hospital, he said to the boy, what happened? Why did your father do this? And the boy said, it's Tuesday. And that was it. It can be anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You'd never know what you're walking into. There is no predictability, and it just becomes part of everyday life. And if something becomes part of everyday life like that, it just changes the way that you view the world, and you no longer necessarily even think of it as a traumatic event. It's just life. So part of our challenge is to help people see that there can be a different life.
She doesn't want to talk to you, man. She doesn't want to talk to you. Back.
Oh my God! No!
No!
Stop it!
Do you think you'd be happier as a boy?
I don't understand what you were thinking. Tell me exactly what happened.
Nothing.
Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing. You know I have to submit a report to the judge.
Who you texting?
Texting a friend. What do you care?
Let me see your phone.
I'm not gonna let you see my phone. It's my phone.
I don't want to violate you, Manny, but this doesn't look good. What were you thinking?
Are you stupid or something? Let me see your phone. Yo, Mario, what's up?
Come
here.
I have nothing to
Hey, man, why don't you leave her alone?
I was thinking, I gotta do something.
Well, you sure did something.
A lot of times youth grow up in two different worlds simultaneously. One world in which there are rules and laws that govern behavior and what you should and shouldn't do. But then they grow up in another world where there is violence in the home and violence on the street, and that's just the way that things are, and you have to toughen up. The challenge for them is negotiating when do you apply which set of rules.
She doesn't want to talk to you, man. She doesn't want to talk to you, man. What are you gonna do about it, huh?
Oh my God! No! Stop it!
Leave me alone, man.
No! Stop it! Stop it!
Because oftentimes they grow up in these environments, they don't necessarily have a sense of other ways of being. I so badly want to say, oh, you need to stop drinking, you need to stop smoking, stop cutting, stop fighting, but we have to first back up a little bit and say why. Why is this person doing what they're doing? Because on some level, what they're doing is working. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it.
Thank you. Now I want to open the chat and, if possible, tech team, if I could just hear from the audience as well. I would just like to hear any reactions to the video, please. Failing. Is there anyone who felt this, heartbreaking? Absolutely. Okay. So in the video, it was very interesting because as I'll discuss further along, everyone reacts to trauma completely differently. So in the first clip, you see the young man who is almost emotionally numb, right? So they ask him, what happened, what may have triggered, your father to do this. And he's to the point, it's Tuesday, you don't have to do anything. You breathe and this is what happens. And so he is emotionally numb to it, almost detached from the trauma itself. And then on the other hand, disconnected with their emotions. Thank you, Samuel. Yes. On the other hand, you have the other gentleman who, as we can see, must have had some prior trauma that he has been through because he was, walking and he has nothing to do with the lady or her boyfriend, but he is triggered by the environment. And so because he was triggered, he now sees, a potential bully, right? Someone who might remind him of someone from his past. And his first instinct is to act, to fight back. And as he's fighting back, we're seeing a small portion of it, but we don't know how much of it was warranted, right? Because we do see the boyfriend getting a little bit aggressive and, we see the cursing going back and forth, but we didn't see him actually attack the young lady, right? Not to say that that's, appropriate behavior at all, but it's almost like, he wasn't asked to help her. It was unwarranted. And then once he got on top of him, he continued to attack and beat on the guy uncontrollably. And what you're seeing is someone who's blacking out, right? He may go through this whole physical motion and fight and not even realize what he's doing. So I don't know if that's something that anyone in the audience has experienced prior, where you're around youth and, you might even see a fight, or you might even see you're looking at them and it's just like, that is not them. It's like someone completely took over them. And that's the trauma. That's the trauma reaction. And it gets to be a point in time where sometimes you're not even able to calm them down. And it might take different types of restraints or de-escalating, but that is something that is very common with people who experience trauma, especially abuse. All right. So now I want to talk about how trauma affects the youth development. So as stated before, we can see different reactions to trauma in stressful situations, like overreacting, or there's no reaction at all. So there might be times, again, when we are expecting for someone to escalate, or we're expecting for them to cry or to feel scared. And instead they just retreat to just, either I'm going to dissociate or I'm just, out here trying to survive. And it happened and it's going to happen again. And then you see them kind of dip down into this helplessness, which then leads to depression. Also, children with complex trauma histories may develop chronic or recurrent physical complaints such as headaches or stomach aches. So let's just think about it this way. You have a youth who has been physically abused, and we don't know how many blows to the head they may have had. We don't know how many beatings they may have endured, but they often come, or you may see them going to the nurse quite frequently. And sometimes, you may think, okay, is this for real? Or, is this just something that they're trying to do to get out of class or get out of doing something? But most of it is real. And what they end up doing is engaging in these risky behaviors such as smoking or drugs, and they're trying to self-medicate themselves. So times when, they feel like, oh, I have a headache, or I'm not really that hungry, and so I want to work up an appetite, or I just actually just want to sleep. I haven't been able to sleep. So now I might go out and, smoke some substances to help me deal with that. Or I may have constant thoughts in my head that reminds me of the trauma, having those PTSD flashbacks. I can remember like very, vividly the small flashbacks of me, enduring sexual assault or incest. And now it's just a matter of how can I get those thoughts to stop? Now on the diagram to the left, I have a scan of a normal and healthy 3-year-old child. And as you can see, the brain and the head is really big and it's of normal size. And then to the right, there is a 3-year-old child who has experienced extreme neglect inside the home. And there is a significant difference in the size of their brains. So the one on the right who's experienced the trauma, they are less developed in their brain. Now, body dysregulation and hypersensitivity is also very common amongst trauma. So this can happen with sounds, smells, light, or touch. You might even see like children walking around with hoodies, or sunglasses. And of course, sometimes it's just to hide themselves. And so, they just feel a little bit safer with it, you could say. Also, it's because of their sensitivity. And they may not even realize it, but that's just something that we as parents or professionals, we can look into and just see if there's something more there. Thank you. Next slide, please. So emotional responses to trauma. Children often experience significant difficulty identifying, expressing, or managing their emotions. One thing that I've seen quite frequently, especially within African American youth males, is that they are always given the diagnosis of ADHD or ADD in school, but sometimes what I find is actually just depression. Students who don't want to be in class, students who have difficulty concentrating on the task at hand, students who lack the motivation. And when you talk to them, they may not exactly know or be able to articulate their feelings or emotions, but they know that something is wrong. They might just say, I just can't do it. I can't concentrate. I don't like being here. But there's something going on. And that is how trauma can also impact, their emotional responses. They might shut down, or they may not even just be able to articulate it to you. So a part of just, being helpers out here, we try to help them find those things that are triggering them and help them connect the dots so that we can further help them. They also display unpredictable or explosive emotional reactions and struggle with calming down. Now, this is an example that I have seen just, within the past week as school just started here in Prince George's County. I have a student who is a 10th grader, and she's just experienced so much in her life, has a history of being a runaway. She has also had to leave her mom's house and go stay with her grandmother. Her father died because he did try to commit suicide, but he was unsuccessful. And so he was in the hospital until his final days because he did shoot himself in the head. And I got a call from our security team at the school. And so they said, Miss Assata, we have, XYZ student here. She was put out the class by her teacher. She will not calm down. She's just, she will not listen to anybody. And they wanted me to come up there before it had to escalate. So we do have a resource officer at the school, but they just wanted to see if I could come in and help out anyway. Now, normally, this young lady, she is very bubbly. She does have the capacity and the tendency to be explosive. So she has it in her. And that's the survival mode in her, doing what she has to do, trying to protect herself by any means. And so I go into the classroom and she's immediately crying. She's upset. Why did they bring all of these security guards in here for me? It's not even that serious. What are you guys doing? Just frightened, frightened and also reacting by, what is happening? I feel like, are you guys gonna put handcuffs on me? So rightfully so, I can understand. And so knowing a little bit about her history, I asked her, hey, what's going on? What's the problem? And she said, I am just having a bad day. I told the teacher I broke my phone and I'm just having a bad day. And she, is not understanding. And I feel like she's just picking on me and I'm trying to leave her alone, but, I just feel singled out. And so I said, okay, the phone. And so I just start to think about it, right? Because the phone, if you lose your phone, you break your phone, that's something serious, But a little bit extra is that on the phone, I asked her, I said, hey, is this a new phone? Have you backed up all your photos? What was on your phone? And so what was on her phone was her pictures of her father. Now, thank goodness for technology. Most of the time, if you upload it to the cloud, it stays there, whether you get a new phone or not. But in her eyes, she's thinking, I've lost everything. I've lost my ability to remember my father. I don't have any pictures anymore. And everything around her, even though she's in a class with 30 other students and they're all doing their work, none of that matters. In that moment, all she can think about is that problem that she's having. And again, we have multiple security guards nearby. We have a resource officer nearby. I'm the school clinician. I'm there. And she is just reacting. So, of course, a lot of words were said. I don't take it personally because I know that she is just lovely outside of, the times when she's having those issues. But she was very guarded. And even the officers and the security team who she is, fond of, she just was not able to talk. All she felt was, it's you against me, and no one's helping me with my problem, right? So that's just an example there of how it could be hard for them to express their feelings and emotions, and also having struggles with calming down. They can also be guarded in interactions with others, perceiving situations as stressful or dangerous. Another example of this could be just children fighting at school. So after you may have been attacked or jumped by two or more people, now your guard is up. You're going to school and you're feeling like, I need to walk back. I don't know what's going on. So now when it's time to transition to classes, that's not a normal thing for them. So they might want to either leave class early or they may be getting to class late. So as an educator, I'm sure the first thing that comes to your mind is, hey, like, what is taking so long with you getting to class? You're already here. You shouldn't be, walking around the whole school building, but that might be a safety defense for some. But again, you won't know until you understand, some of these trauma responses. Emotional numbing, we discussed that earlier with the gentleman in the clip. Reactions to threats from the environment that may cause revictimization. And of course, higher risk of experiencing depression. Next slide, please. Behavior. So this might be one, again, that a lot of people might notice. Children are easily triggered or set off. They have a lack of impulse. They behave in unpredictable, oppositional, and extreme ways. They dissociate often. So sometimes, it may appear as though they're just kind of spacing out or not listening, have their head buds in. They're more likely to engage in risky behaviors such as self-harm or unsafe sexual practices. So let's think of a child who may have endured molestation or sexual abuse or sexual assault. So you might see these children as being over sexually active or promiscuous, having multiple partners, going to the nurse or having to go to the doctor because they think that they might have an STD or something like that. They also may engage in illegal activities such as alcohol and substance use, assaulting others, stealing, or running away. So again, thinking about those protective factors for them. What are those defense mechanisms? How are they able to survive? So I know that I have something going on in my head, but I don't really want to talk about it. But I do know that smoking, it calms me down. I feel like, I don't really care about what's going on around me. And it gives me a euphoric feeling where I feel good, laughing, everything's funny to me. I'm not as upset as I may be. So some of those things you might find and come across. And then, sorry, I'm just trying to put on here. So a child growing up with an abusive, authoritative figure may react defensively and aggressively in response to perceived blame or attack. Or alternatively, may at times be over-controlled, rigid, and unusually compliant with adults. So in this case, you may see children who have like oppositional defiant disorder. So that's a disorder in which the child, they have difficulty complying with rules and also listening to authority figures. So these would be the principal, the administration of the school, or police officer. So they are not, listening, and before you even come and approach them, they're already perceiving, okay, you're gonna say I did something. Now, first thing I'm gonna say, I didn't do it, or why are you singling me out? So those are some of the things that you might come across. Because of this, because of them always engaging in illegal activities or being more prone to it, it makes them more likely that they will have a run with this. So, next slide, please. Disassociation. So I'm not sure how many may be familiar, but disassociation can affect the child's ability to be fully present in activities of daily life. So as I was mentioning earlier, some kids might come off as hasty or as if they're not listening. They may perceive themselves as detached from their bodies or on the ceiling or somewhere else in the room watching what is happening to their bodies. You see this a lot. Again, I know I keep using sexual assault, but that is, top of the line as far as some of these things, as far as disassociation or regression. These children, they may experience those flashbacks in which it's easier for them to have those out-of-body experiences. They may even suggest that, I just feel like my body is on autopilot. I feel like I'm here, but I'm not here. And so when I'm doing my clinical interviews, that's also a question that I ask how are you doing? And usually youth, they give you the same thing, I'm fine, or it's okay, I'm doing all right. And I asked them, are you present with me? And so sometimes they might give me a little look like, what do you mean? But what I mean by that is, do you feel like you're living or do you feel like you're existing? Right? Because those are two different things. So when you're living, you're present, you're here, your attention is here, you're engaged, you're active. When you're existing, you're just there and you're letting everything else just kind of do its thing around you, right? So sometimes they may feel as if they are in a dream or some altered state that is not quite real, or as if the experience is happening to someone else. They may also lose memories or sense of the experiences having happened to them. So even times when we are trying to uncover, what is the underlying trauma here, sometimes they truly just don't even remember because they've worked so hard to forget those memories that it's either they're trying to figure out, did it happen, did it not happen, or did it happen exactly this way? So although children may not be able to purposefully disassociate, once they have learned to dissociate as a defense mechanism, they may automatically dissociate during other stressful situations or when faced with trauma reminders. Next slide. Attachments and relationships when it comes to youth development. So the most important thing that a child will be able to receive when they come into this world is gaining a close relationship with their caregiver. That could be mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, even just having teachers that, are great trusted adults for them. So having that close relationship and having secure attachments that are healthy and where you feel like, okay, this is the first time that I've learned to actually trust others, especially adults. This allows them to regulate their emotions, speak freely, also know how to console themselves, right? When they're feeling overwhelmed, and how they just, in all, interact with the world. So some may develop a sense of the world as being safe or unsafe, or come to the understanding that they're, of their own values. So when those relationships are unstable or unpredictable, children learn that they cannot rely on others to help them. So if they have a primary caregiver who exploits or abuses them, they then learn that, they feel like they, as a person, they are bad and that the world is a terrible place, or they're underdeserving. The majority of abused or neglected children have difficulty developing a strong, healthy attachment to a caregiver. Children who don't have healthy attachments have been shown to be more vulnerable to stress. They have trouble controlling and expressing emotions, and may even react violently or inappropriately to situations. So being able to develop healthy, supportive relationships with friends and significant others depends on having first developed those kinds of relationships within the family. So a child with complex trauma may have problems down the line with future romantic relationships, friendships, and again, with authority figures. It could be teachers or police officers. This may even show up with children who experience oppositional defiant disorder, like I mentioned earlier, having trouble with authority, or conduct disorder, and that's a disregard for authority or other people. All right, and we can move to the next slide. Self-concept. Children surrounded by violence in their homes and communities learn from an early age that they cannot trust the world and it's not safe. They are powerless to change the circumstances, and they have a belief about themselves or others in the world that, I'm no good, or the world is not a safe place, or no one is accepting of me. So these negative expectations interfere with positive problem solving and foreclose an opportunity to make differences in their own lives. So even when it comes to just making positive, you know, problem solving or resolution, they sometimes don't see it because everything around them is bad. So you might see this when you're trying to give a child, you know, advice or you're mediating a situation and it's, hey, was there anything that you may have, you know, done that you could have done differently? And so it may always be something of, no, I don't see how it could be done differently, or something as simple as I am trying to write a document or I'm trying to write an essay and my pencil broke. And now I'm just, you know, slamming the pencil on my knee. I'm upset. And some people may say, well, why didn't you just ask the teacher? And for them, it's not as that simple. You know, oh, if I ask the teacher, they think I did something wrong, or they think that it was my fault, or I wasn't prepared. So sometimes it's even just that confidence and advocating for themselves, knowing that, you know, they are worthy, knowing that they do have value. So a lot of these children have learned to operate in more of a survival mode. So they live from moment to moment without pausing to think about or plan or even dream about, you know, their future or where they will be post school. They're just committed to, okay, today, what I need is food. I haven't ate. I don't care about college or I don't care about doing well on this test. I'm just going to school because I was told I have to, or, you know, my parents might get locked up. So they're just in survival mode and focus on the right now. Okay, next slide. Thank you. And so just something interesting that I wanted to share as well, just thinking about the economic impact of trauma on our youth. So the annual cost of child abuse and neglect is estimated around $103.8 billion or $284.3 million per day. So this was a research study done that this is numbers from 2007. So of course, as inflation goes up and as, you know, more people are populating, that number rises as well. So this number includes both direct costs, which are about 70.7 billion, which include the immediate needs of maltreated children. So that's our hospitalization, mental health care, child welfare systems, and law enforcement. And also this includes indirect costs, which is about $33.1 billion, which are the secondary or long-term effects of child abuse and neglect. So this is our special education programs, juvenile delinquency, mental health and healthcare, and also adult criminal justice system and lost productivity to the society. So think about how much we're spending on trying to aid these children, trying to give them the support that they need to be rehabilitated, to be productive citizens of society. So this is truly, you know, something that we have to think about. It's not just, you know, a few children here or there. This is happening all around, and we're spending lots of money when, you know, this could possibly be something to spearhead programs that we can place inside the schools. So just like my placement, Prince George's County, they saw a need that, you know, we do have our school counselors. However, because they may be so swamped with, you know, their regular administrative duties, plus, you know, them attending to the kids also need an opportunity for social emotional wellness help, right? So that is why the County of Prince George's, they started a contract for a grant to put school clinicians, so mental health clinicians inside each of their schools in Prince George's County. So I thought that that was a great initiative, and I'm also a product of it. And that's what I do in my daily. All right. And next slide. So now that we've discussed the impact of trauma, right? We've seen how it affects the behaviors, their self-concept, how it affects, you know, economic impact, how it affects, you know, them going through disassociation and a whole bunch of other things. Now let's talk about how can we help, right? So this is exactly for our parents. This is for the teachers, any working professional who is in close proximity to children or youth. The first thing is to educate yourself, right? I know we all watch a lot of TV. We all, you know, go on things based off of assumption, but first educate yourself. Learn about the common triggers and reactions that children have with traumatic events. Also, seek support from a mental health professional qualified in behavioral health. When needed, we can help children and families cope with the impact of traumatic events and situations and help them move toward recovery. Third, avoid blame. Sometimes it can be very complex getting to the root of your child's trauma or the student's trauma. Hold back from any negative emotions or reactions you may have so your child doesn't feel blamed. This is something really important. I know, you know, I'm empathetic to parents, but sometimes even when the child feels safe enough to disclose, you know, anything that has happened to them, it can be very difficult because the first thing as a parent or even just as a provider, you know, you are just like so worked up and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. What happened? Tell me exactly who did it. And so having that reaction as valid as it is to respond in that way, it can sometimes cause the child to feel a little bit reluctant. Like, did I put myself in this situation? Was it something I did? Now I'm gonna have my mom and my dad worrying about it. I don't want them worrying about me. Now I, you know, just so many different things there. So the children, they may blame themselves for the trauma, even if it was out of their control, but it's important to explain to them that they are not responsible and that they are not to blame. Next, assure them that they are safe. Discuss ways you are ensuring their safety at home and at school. So after a fight, you know, at the school, we might say, hey, you know, I understand that, you know, there may be some tension here, or you guys are nervous about coming back to school. Here are some steps in which we are trying to mitigate the tensions, and we want to make sure you're safe here. Encourage self-esteem. Positive experiences can help boost your child's self-esteem and encourage growth, a sense of belonging, and independence. Listen. Be available to listen if your child wants to talk, but don't force conversations if your child is not ready. While discussing difficult topics or conversations, provide them with reassurance and acknowledge their feelings. A lot of my job is truly just listening to children talk, even if it could be something that may not seem as important to me. It's something where the child feels comfortable. So I know when something really bad happens, I'll be the first one that they come to. Keep a routine. Develop a consistent and regular routine at home and school. So everything that they are, you know, being taught at home, let's try to keep it going at school and vice versa. And lastly, be patient. Some children heal quicker from trauma than others. All right. And so next slide. Thank you. So again, thank you so much. You know, everybody who was able to join on today, and a special thanks to the Annie E Foundation for allowing me to discuss this topic. I put my contact below if anyone wants to reach out. And now I believe we can open up for a few questions.
Yes, thank you, Shantel. So folks, the Q&A box is open. I think you could throw it in the chat too. We'll try to track, but the Q&A box is open if folks do have questions. I also, as you're typing in your questions, want to assure you all that we will share out the recording of this. And there was some interest in the economic impact and the study behind that. And so we can share out resources that were cited in today's
Absolutely.
presentation as well. So yeah, that's great.
And for all of those who are even just, in the audience and you're, thinking about spearheading a project, please, we have the Annie Casey Foundation here. I have my experience as someone who's worked closely with youth. I know you have as well, Alex. But there can be programs like I know right now at my school, the high school, we have a outside mentoring group that comes in and they speak to the kids about once every 2 weeks. And so we found that to be very helpful, especially as they transition on to college or to, certain trades that they want to work on. But just having that involved in the school, it just, it really does help kids.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that example. I think we hear a lot about the positive impacts of mentoring, and it sort of to contextualize it in what you're talking about and how creating trusting relationships and how critical that is for healing. It all sort of comes together. So thanks for elevating that. So one question came through. And so this person is asking, when somebody is triggered or blacked out, how can we support them in sort of regulating or calming back down or coming back to center?
That's a great question. First, being able to just recognize what's happening. I know that sometimes we're not always, given the opportunity to just, act fast because you're still trying to figure out what's going on. But I think it really depends on the situation. So when a child is blacking out, I think it's important to just get them in touch with their senses. So, number one, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Do you hear what I'm saying? Also, just helping them to get a little bit more grounded, hey, let me know if you can hear me. Also, let's try to see if we can get in touch with those senses. What are you smelling? What are you hearing? What are you, is there something that you want to touch? Can I give you a stress ball? Something that can just help calm them down. And also just, again, hey, I see that you're shaking. Are you okay? I see that you're breathing heavily. Is something, did something come in the room that I'm not aware of? Just talking and sometimes not talking, right? So it really just depends on the situation. Of course, if you see children fighting, we want to make sure that we, break that up according to whatever your job title is. But if you see them fighting, you want to break that up, but also sometimes it just means letting them find their calm. So kids, they're so used to adults just coming straight in and just saying, hey, what's wrong? What happened? What are you doing? Why'd you do this? And sometimes it just takes, hey, you know what? We're going to separate you. We're going to put you in a quiet environment and let you kind of come to, right? So they might need to take a breath and just, relax themselves. Okay, you seem a little bit more relaxed now. Are you ready to talk? How are you feeling? Do I need to get you any medical attention? This is just what I'm noticing, right? So even if you see a child who is maybe blacked out or looks like they could be disassociated, hey, I just want to check because sometimes they don't even know. I just want to check. It seems like you're kind of looking off, like, are you daydreaming? Are you okay? Do I need to get any medical assistance? And this also puts them on notice, like, oh, am I doing something? What am I doing? Oh, no, I'm okay. I was just thinking about something. Oh, okay, so what are you thinking about? Something seems to be bothering you. Just trying those different tactics, but it truly does depend on the situation. But that was a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, lots of tools sort of to offer. And I was hearing that naming, like even seeing, I notice you shaking, like naming how somebody's body is trying to regulate and sort of cluing folks into that and being in their own body. I think that's really powerful. So we've got time for one last question, which asks, how do we support teens with boundaries and when they don't have many other people in their life? So for example, this person shared that they have an experience where they have felt like the only person in a young woman's life, and as much as they tried to bring in others to help or to connect her to other resources, she was really reluctant or not capable or ready to take those steps.
Great, another great question. I would say helping the child then to identify trusted adults that even if they don't live there, sometimes they might have an older cousin, they might have a teacher in the building who may not be their teacher, but it's just someone who they feel like they can relate to. They like going to eat lunch in their room. I would also say just providing them with resources. So sometimes with my students, I might say, hey, Miss Assata, I have a life, I love you, but I have a life. So on the times that we are not in school, I want to make sure that you are able to talk to somebody. I don't want you to bottle this in and then wait for Monday morning when I'm able to talk to you. Is there a way, I'm going to give you this 988 number. And the challenge here is I really want you to try to step out of your comfort zone to talk to them. And you talking to them, it won't alert me, depending on the situation, it won't alert me as, maybe this was something of, a serious crisis where you wanted to harm yourself, but you felt like you needed an outlet to talk to someone because you have no one to talk to. Let's get them to use these resources that are offered in Maryland, try to encourage them. You may not, feel comfortable talking to me, but I have male colleagues. I have, colleagues with different ethnic backgrounds. If I found someone, would you be open to sharing with them? So this is just something, again, every case is cut a little bit different, but these are just a few steps that you could use. But I do encourage that we start using this 988 number. They're ready to listen. I use it all the time. Sometimes I even say, hey, let's call them together. And then now you know how to do it, right? So that was a great question. Thank you so much. I think that was Miss Nikki.
Yes, thank you for leaning in on that. We've got a couple other questions in the chat that I think we can actually figure out how to follow up when we share this recording. And there's lots of really good, rich conversation going on here. So really appreciate, again, you, Ms. Assata, for coming. And I always reflect on how learning about this doesn't necessarily make things a whole lot easier, but it helps us navigate the blues and grays, right? Knowing we don't live in a black and white world. So I appreciate you sharing this wisdom and lots of tips and things for folks to use in their toolbox. So thank you, everybody who is deeply committed to this work and to supporting young people and to uplifting the importance of mental health. This is incredibly important. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. Again, we will share the recording, we'll share resources that were used in this presentation. And don't forget, folks, that this is a series. So come on back. The next webinar is on adolescent development, stages of adolescent development, and going a bit deeper on that. And it's going to take place on October 17th. So keep an eye out for that link, and hopefully we will see you there. Thanks, everyone. Take good care of yourselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much.